achievement. Inshallah, after Islam had spread across most of the Arabian Peninsula, the Prophet ﷺ would then send messengers out to different rulers across in the neighboring countries, to the Romans, to the Persians, and of course some into Africa. And so he sent out 6 persons in the month of Dhul-Hijjah, 3 of them setting out together, and they each carried a letter. And he sent out several people. And then it is between the truce of Al-Hudaybiyah and his death, the Messenger of God dispersed some of his companions to the kings of the Arabs and the foreigners to call them to God. According to Ibn Humayd, he found a letter containing a list of those whom the Messenger of God sent to the kings of the unbelievers and what he said to his companions when he sent them out. Yazid sent the letter to Ibn Shihab al-Zuhri via a trustworthy countryman of his, and al-Zuhri recognized the letter as genuine. The letter stated that the Messenger of God went out to his companions one morning and said to them, "I have been sent as a mercy and for all, therefore convey the message from me, and God shall have mercy on you. Do not become disobedient to me as the disciples became disobedient to Jesus, the son of Mary." They asked the Messenger of God, "How were they disobedient?" He replied, "He called them to the like of what I have called you to. Those whom sent close by were pleased and accepted. Those whom he sent far off were displeased and refused." Jesus complained of their behavior to God, and when they awoke the next morning, each of them could speak the language of the people to whom he had been sent. Then Jesus said, "This is an affair that God has determined for you, so go forth." So the Messenger of God gave his companions different destinations. And so he sent Hatib, the ruler, to the ruler of Alexandria, which is Egypt. Hatib delivered to him the letter of the Messenger of God, and Al-Makawis gave the Messenger of God 4 slave girls, including Maria, the mother of Abraham, the son of the Messenger of God. The Messenger of God then sent another person to Caesar, who was Heraclius, or the emperor of the Byzantine Empire, the king of the Romans. When the hire brought him the letter of the Messenger of God, he looked into it and then placed it between his thighs and his flanks. And so it further says, "We were merchant folk. The warfare between us and the Messenger of God had prevented us from journeying, so that our wealth became depleted. After the truce between us and the Messenger of God, we feared that we might not encounter security. I set out for Syria with a group of merchants of Quraysh. Our specific destination was Gaza, and we arrived there at the time of the victory of the emperor over the Persians who were in his land. He expelled them and regained from them the great cross which they had carried off. Just like Muslims would carry their flags into battles, so would others. But of course, a lot of Christian armies at the time, they would also carry a great cross with them to show that they were Christians. And this cross was lost by Heraclius to the Persians. Concerning they were both superpowers, they were continuously fighting, which weakened the empire. And of course, when Muhammad ﷺ came, both of these empires were in a weakened state. And you can see Muhammad ﷺ came in such a time that it was, I wouldn't say easy for them, but it was still easier than it would have been before for the Muslims to defeat both the Persians and the Byzantine Empire. Having accomplished this against them and having received word that this cross had been rescued from them, he set out from there on foot in thanksgiving to God for restoring it to him to pray in Jerusalem. Carpets were spread out for him and fragrant herbs were strewn on them. When he reached Jerusalem and performed his worship, with him were his military commanders and the nobles of the Romans. He arose troubled one morning, turning his gaze to the sky. His military commanders said to him, "By God, you have arisen troubled this morning, O king." "Yes," he replied, I was shown in a dream last night that the kingdom of the circumcision will be victorious." They said to him, "O king, we know of no nation that practices circumcision but the Jews, and they are under your control and authority. Send to all over whom you have the authority in your lands, and command them to behead all the Jews under their control, and be rid of this care." By God, even as they were debating this proposal, a messenger from the ruler of Busra arrived leading an Arab. The kings used to send each other reports and said, O king, this man of the Arabs, the people of sheep and camels, will report about something marvelous that has happened in his country. Ask him about it. When the messenger of the ruler of Busra had brought the man to Heracles, the latter said to his interpreter, ask him, what was this event that happened in his country? So he asked him, and the man said, a man has appeared among us claiming to be the prophet of God. Some people have followed him and believed him, others have opposed him. And between them there have been bloody battles, and in many places that was their state when I left them. And after he had given Heracles this report, the latter said, strip him. They stripped him, and behold, he was circumcised. And so Heracles said, this is by God is what I was shown in the dream, not what you say. Give him his garment and be gone. And so then Heracles summoned his chief of police and said to him, turn Syria upside down for me until you bring me someone from the people of this man. He meant by the prophet. By God, while we were still at Gaza, his chief of police assaulted us and said, are you from such and such people? And so what happened was they went around and they captured this man, and they continued to bother people, the people of Heracles. And so what happened was he was so worried, just like the Pharaoh was worried, just as Nimrod was worried. Each of them were worried about what would happen to their people, and so or what would happen to their empires, because rulers, and many a times, as they have gained their riches from conquering other people, they will always try to protect what they have gained through war. Another great example is, if you look in history, is one of when the Europeans first arrived in Mexico, and the king at the time, the king of Mexico, he was an emperor actually. He became very worried that new people had come to his land, and these people rode horses, and there was no horses in Mexico or North America or South America. And so when the first Europeans arrived, he was really worried. And so in the end, he became so confused on what to do, that when they started conquering Mexico, most of the Europeans, they had weapons, high caliber weapons, where they could easily defeat the tribes the soldiers of the emperors. And in the end, the emperor was killed. His name was Montezuma, and he was killed. And so we can see this throughout history, and we can see this even in the Quran and even in the Bible. With Pharaoh, in the same case, where a small people like Musa alayhi salam, or even Ibrahim alayhi salam, where small people conquered people who had committed immense sin, immense destruction. And in this case, Heracles is worried that his end is near, and that he will, in fact, be like other rulers. He will be either hanged or killed. So Heracles. So then Heracles summoned his chief of police and said to him, "Turn Syria upside down for me." And so they did. And once they found this man, the Heracles asked him, "Are you from the people of this man in the Hijaz?" And he said, "Yes." We said, off to the king with us," he said. So we set out with him, and when we reached the king, "Are you from the kindred of this man?" And they said, "Yes." We said, "Which of you?" he asked. "It's closest to him in kinship." "I am," he said. "I am close to this man," to the prophet. I said, "I swear to God, I never saw a man I should consider more astute than this uncircumcised one." Heracles, that is. "Bring him near," he said. He seated me before him and seated my companions behind him, and then he said, "I will question him. If he lies, refute him. By God, had I lied, they would not have refuted me. However, I was a lordly person, too noble to lie. Also, I knew that if I lied, the least of the matter was that they would hold it against me and speak of it concerning me, so I did not lie to him." And so Heraclius then asked this man, "Tell me about this man who has emerged among you claiming what he claims." I began minimizing his importance to him and disparaging him. "O king," I said, "do not worry about him. His importance is too small to affect you." Paying no attention to this, he said, "Tell me whatever I ask you about him." I said, "Ask whatever you wish." He said, "What is his lineage among him?" I said, "Pure, the best of us in lineage." He asked, "Tell me, has anyone from his family ever said the like of what he says, so that he should be imitating him?" "No," I said. he said, did he have authority among you, of which you then stripped him, so that he brought this discourse in order that you might restore him to his authority? No. So they said, was he a leader before that you stripped him of his authority and now he wants to come back as a leader? And he said, no. He said, tell me about his followers among you, who they are. I said, the weak, poor, young boys and women. As for those of his people who have ears and honor, none of them has followed him. He said, tell me about those who follow him. Do they love him and adhere him, or do they fall out with him and abandon him? I said, no man has followed him and then abandoned him. He said, tell me how the war between you and him is going. I said, variously, sometimes it is his luck to prevail against us, and sometimes our luck to prevail against him. He said, tell me, does he act treacherously? I have found nothing in what he asked me about him in which I could impugn the character of Muhammad. Such was the character of our Prophet that his character could not be impugned. It is said that once the Prophet ﷺ was going to the battle of Hunayn, and one of the Sahaba, he came close to the Prophet as they were riding camels, and if you see when camel riders, one of their foot is on the right or the left side, because they wrap their other foot around the hump of the camel. And so when he got close to the camel, his toe hit the Prophet ﷺ in the foot, and so the Prophet ﷺ got angry with him and told him to go back behind him. Later, after a day, the next day, the Prophet ﷺ was looking for this man, and this man says that the Prophet ﷺ was looking for me, and I thought he would be angry with me. But when the Prophet ﷺ came to the man, he said to the man that you hit me yesterday, and I was angry with you, and forgive me for that. And he gifted him 80 sheep to get his to be forgiven by this man. So such was the character of the Prophet ﷺ. When he was angry, he still he asked for forgiveness and gifted this man 80 sheep. And so I will start. He said, I said, no, we are in a state of truce with him, and yet we fear he may act treacherously. By God, Heraclius paid no attention to what I said, but repeated the conversation to me. He said, I asked what his lineage was among you, and you stated that he was pure. One of your best in lineage. But that is how God chooses a prophet when he chooses one. He chooses him only from the best of his people in lineage. I asked you whether anyone from his family had ever said what he says, so that he would be imitating him. And you said no. I asked you whether he had authority among you, and among you of which you stripped him, so that he brought this discourse, this battle, this fighting in between these two parties, seeking thereby to regain his authority. And you said no. I asked you about his followers, and you stated that they were weak, poor, juveniles, and women. But such have been the followers of the prophets in every age. I ask you about those who follow him, whether they love him and adhere to him, or fall out with him and abandon him. And you stated that no man follows him and then abandons him. But such is the sweetness of his faith. It does not enter our heart and then depart from it. I asked you whether he acts treacherously, and you said no. And so if you have told me the truth about him, he shall surely rest from this very ground under my feet. He should surely rest from me, this very ground under my feet. Take this ground from me. Would that I were with him, that I might wash his feet. Depart to your business. So I left his presence, and clapping my hands together and saying, O worshippers of God, the fear of the son of Abu Qabsa has become serious. Now the kings of the Greeks fear him in their domains in Syria. So Heraclius received the following letters from the messenger of God. And this letter says, in the name of God, the most merciful and compassionate, from Muhammad, the messenger of God, to Heraclius, the ruler of the Romans. Peace to whoever follows right guidance. To proceed, submit yourself, and you shall be safe. Submit yourself, and God shall give you your reward twice over. But if you turn away, the sin of the husbandman shall be upon you. And so the Prophet ﷺ sent these letters, many to the king of Persia, to Syria, and to many other places. And so when the truce between us and the messenger of God took place in the treaty of the year of Al-Hudaybiyah, this is Abu Sufyan saying, I set out to Syria as a merchant, and Abu Sufyan then mentioned a similar accord, and then they started trading. And so these letters were being sent by different people, and you can see the Prophet ﷺ sending out these letters, and so these rulers were worried. And so in the end, the Muslims would conquer these places, and they would in fact spread Islam into these places, not with a sword, but eventually and slowly people would accept Islam. So when Heraclius received the letter of the messenger of God, he took it to put it between his thighs and flanks. Then he wrote to a man in Rome, and he used to read from the Hebrew what they used to write, mentioning the affair of the men, describing him and informing him of what he had received from him. The ruler of Rome wrote back to him, "He is indeed the prophet we have been awaiting. There is no doubt about it. Follow him and believe him." And so Heraclius then gave orders to gather the commanders of the Romans for him in a palatial building, a big building, and he ordered its doors to be closed with them. Now this is an important part of the story because this shows how the believers acted, the non-believers acted. He looked down on them. He looked down on them from the upper floors, and he said to them that this man has come. Will you believe in Islam? Will you believe in the message of this man? And they said no. They were worried, and they said, "No, we do not want to believe in the message of this man, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam." And so he said, "Listen, if you do not believe him, a time will come where he will in fact conquer us, and then he will have to become Muslims." And so that's what happened. But they did not want to be believers. The elders, the chiefs of that place, of the empire, they did not want to be believers. And so Heraclius, he had locked the doors, and so these people ran to the doors trying to open them, trying to say, "Listen, we do not want to be a part of this." And so Heraclius said, "Well, listen, it is out of my authority. And so if you do not want to follow this religion, then I cannot force you to follow it." And so in the end, they did not become believers. But the armies of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ would conquer them. And in fact, Syria would become Syria, and later on Turkey. These regions would become part of the Muslim empire, and they would become Muslims. So inshallah, in the next part, I will talk about another small story, and inshallah, we can learn from something from that story too. Jazakallah. So in the next part, in this part, the Prophet ﷺ after the Battle of Hunayn, what he did was he had a lot of money, a lot of wealth, a lot of booty, and so what he did was he took this booty and he dispersed this booty amongst his people, and some he gave to people. In fact, as we know, the Prophet ﷺ was a ruler and also a political ruler, so he was trying to give gifts and trying to kind of butter people up. But the people he knew, the people who were believers, he knew they would not take the money as others would. And so some of these brothers, the Ansar, they came to the Prophet, they became very unhappy, and they went to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. And they went to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and said to the Prophet ﷺ, "Listen," someone said to the Prophet ﷺ, "Listen, the Ansar are not, some of the brothers in the Ansar are not happy. They're not happy because they did not get the piece of the piece of this booty, that some of the booty that you had captured, they did not get a part of it." And so the Prophet ﷺ understood what was happening. So he went to the Ansar and he said to the Ansar, "Listen, I have been with you. It was because of you that you accepted. It was because of you I came into your houses and you accepted us. You are a great people. And are you not happy that I am with you? That they are leaving with the booty, but I, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, am leaving with you. That you have the Prophet of Muhammad, you have the Prophet of Allah with you. This is a greater gift than the gift that I am giving to these other people. So are you not happy?" And so these people started crying and said, "It is because of the Ansar. It is because of the Ansar that the Muslims have survived. Because when the Muslims were kicked out of Mecca, they came into Medina, and the Ansar, they accepted them. And so we as a people are thankful to you. So be happy that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you this gift of Islam, this gift of Iman, that you know what? The booty does not matter, but what matters is your Iman, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will grant you this gift of Iman. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted you this gift of Iman, so be thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes, that booty I have given out, but I knew that you did not really want that booty. That booty was nothing to you because your hereafter is the best of the rest of the people." And so they started crying, and their beards were full of tears because they could understand that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ had truly taken their welfare, taken their welfare in a good way. And so the people were crying. They could see that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was right. And we can see in this case that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ understood the needs of his people. We can also see in this case that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, being who he was, a great man, that when he was giving out gifts, he was also finding ways for people to come to Islam. He said, "Listen, the people who have lost this booty, I have waited for them even after the Battle of Hunayn, I believe it was Hunayn. the people, the tribes that had been defeated, the Prophet ﷺ went to a certain spot and he was waiting for them there, he would have given back the booty that they had won in battle to them to spread Islam. And this was the greatness of the Prophet ﷺ. He was thinking of Islam, he was thinking of the greatness of Islam and about spreading it, and not about spreading hate and anger and violence. But of course, when it came to for time of violence, he enacted it. So inshallah, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive our sins, and inshallah we see these stories, the stories of Heracles, we see the stories of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who he acts in a great manner. And so we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive our sins and to put us on the right path.